Spacemen, it's been a while since Matt, Mike, and Rob have been together, but here we are. We've got a plan to do some stuff here. It's going to work out pretty well. But Leroy Jenkins today on the Manspace. Welcome to the Manspace podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter. Welcome, Spacemen. We've officially entered the combat zone of World of Warcraft.
Dude, do you remember that old, you remember The Onion?
Yes. Yeah, I freaking love that thing.
I love The Onion. Back when World of Warcraft was becoming big, they did this video where it was they were interviewing all these people where they're like, so I'm playing this game called World of Warcraft. It's like, this is my avatar that's playing World of Warcraft. It's like 3 layers deep, and
it's getting all meta. Dude, I've never played that game. Games like that stress me out. I would do what I've thought about this when it comes to war. I've thought, dude, I would not do well if it's like this strategy, hey, we're going to move in slow. I'd be the guy yelling out Leroy Jenkins, and I'd be out there and be, well, Rob got shot.
It's like, I was going to say, you'd be the first one shot, Rob.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You'd be like the old guy in Helm's Deep with one eye holding the arrow precariously, and then it fires off and starts war.
And it's not even, I couldn't even claim any heroics, and it wouldn't be like, well, thanks to Rob, we went out there, and, it's like, Rob went out and got shot. The rest of us went and did our plan later, and it worked fine. If Rob would have calmed the crap down,
I'd
somebody
be the guy
trips over your dead body,
who spends all his time lining up the shot and then never takes it. Someone beats me to it every time.
Mike's like, hold on, I got it. Hold on. Oh, okay, hold on. I'm going to move to this next guy. Oh,
dude, that reminds me. We'll do another episode on this later. But I just finished the Dave Grohl book, and
I say, when are we doing that one?
Oh, we'll introduce that on this one today. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, come back later for that one. But I forgot about this, but the background of the story was kind of like this Leroy Jenkins thing where I can't even remember. I just freaking read it, but it's like some stadium in Europe somewhere, maybe. It was either that or Madison Square Garden. I can't remember. But the Foo Fighters are backstage, and somebody that was in charge of something was telling him that Bruce Springsteen played that same arena, and it got so intense in there, people jumping, that they cracked the foundation.
Oh,
and so he basically was like, so that's the expectation. Dave Grohl's like, oh crap. So he's all trying to hype himself up, and he gets, I think, part of being so hyped up. Oh, it was in Sweden, I think. Yeah. So he's all, maybe at the very beginning, I don't know, but he starts running around the stage and trips over a cord somewhere and just whoa, falls 12 feet down. But it's so funny looking when you watch the video, because he seriously looks like, oh man, that dude's dead. But he falls down, and he talks about when he was a kid, jumping off of roofs and slicing his leg open and stuff, and never feeling physical pain. But he's like, yeah, I felt it. So he broke his ankle and gets a microphone down there, and he's so upset that he had this huge expectation to entertain these people, and in the first song he's like, whoop. So he's like, I'm gonna go to the hospital, but I'm coming back, and we're gonna finish this show.
Everyone just wait here.
Yeah. So this doctor takes him and props him up with some brace or something, and then brings him back to the show in a chair, and he finishes. That was a tour where he played in his chair for the whole thing, because he broke his
throne.
Yeah, I heard about that one.
Yeah, pulled a Leroy Jenkins right off the freaking stage.
Leroy Jenkins. Ben Folds did that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he wrote a song about it.
A song called Hiroshima, where he walks out and trips. He said, well, he trips off the stage.
Did you hear that?
I did. What was that?
Right when you said Hiroshima, there was this huge lightning crash. That was insensitive, Houston.
Yeah. So anyway, here's there. We'll mention the book club thing in a second. I was going to mention the expectations of like Bruce Springsteen played here and this happened.
Yeah.
This whitewater rafting trip I did, we were, our guide kept making terrible jokes, and I hope he doesn't listen to the show. He doesn't.
He doesn't anymore.
Not anymore. There goes one fan down to 17. He said, I was like trying to make jokes. It's like, so my brother-in-law goes, hey, have you seen any good whitewater rafting movies? And I turned to the guide and I was like, hey, did they make you watch The River Wild for training videos? I don't know if you guys saw that. Was Meryl Streep and Kevin Bacon.
Or Whitewater Summer, even better.
Oh, I also wanted to throw in, did they make you watch Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown?
But I loved that movie as a kid.
Then he tells me, because these rapids were like, it was too late in the season. One rapid we went through, he said, that's actually the scariest rapid I've ever been on, just when it's at full capacity, which we were at like 15% capacity. He said, there's tons of whirlpools. I've watched it pull a raft down to the bottom and then come shooting back up. But I'm on there like, it was in and out in like 15 seconds. I was like, neat. But he said, that's the one they trained Meryl Streep on for that movie. I was like, this just sounds like you're lying to me.
You've gone river rafting where Meryl Streep did.
He also said, we trained Meryl Streep to be Swiftwater certified. And I was like, what do you mean we, man? You were like a turd in a pocket when she was freaking training for that movie.
Yeah, but it was his company.
I guess, whatever. But now moving on to this, and then we'll move on to our topic. We have to decide what book we're going to do for our first book club, because Spacemen, we're going to start doing manly book clubs where we get together and scratch ourselves and discuss books. We have
you can read along at home.
Yes, one of 3 options to start. I'm thinking of 2. I can't remember the third. There's a Dave Grohl book. There's the Comfort Crisis. Didn't we have a third one we mentioned?
Yeah, the one that I'm reading that I think is not good.
Oh yeah, the one about like what every woman should know about men.
Yeah,
there's a companion to that too, right? What every man should know about women.
That one seems like a bad idea too. It's called For Women Only: What You Need to Know About the Inner Lives of Men. It was written by a woman.
Well, Mike, you shouldn't be reading it. That's the problem.
I know. Well, I had a lady, one of my clients, asked me to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Because your client
automatically
found it helpful,
breaking the rule.
or
well, no, someone had recommended it to her and her husband, and she read it, and like she would ask her husband about certain things, and he felt like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. And she goes, but I kind of want to know like what your take on it is. And I was like, okay. And I really did try to kind of keep an open mind. And there's like some stuff that I think, okay, you're not super far off. There's some stuff I just disagree with the way she paints the picture of men. And there's times where I think she lets men off the hook for crap we shouldn't be let off the hook for.
Well, but Mike,
like
maybe
she's not adding context. She's making excuses for us.
But maybe if you saw her like in an interview, she's really attractive, because that tends to be when I watch things, they'll get this woman on. She's like, she's written books on men. I'm like, well, so does she have any background or credentials? It's like, no, but look how attractive she is.
Well, so did I tell you what her degrees are in?
An MRS degree?
No,
Okay.
she has a bachelor's in
Man
government
studies.
and economics.
Oh, so she totally understands men.
And then she has a master's from Harvard in public policy.
I don't know.
That's what qualifies her to.
Well, the truth is, you don't need qualifications anymore. You just need a social media account.
Yeah, but this book's old. She needed qualifications then. She should have needed qualifications then.
Did she? Hey, but
anyway,
go ahead.
Well, so wait, because there's one also called For Men Only, which I'll be reading at some point. And that one's about women. And my client was telling me about it, and he goes, yeah, and he goes, the first 3 chapters, he goes, they're kind of written by her husband, because that one she co-authored with her husband, which I thought was hilarious. I'm like, wait a minute, the book that's about the inner lives of women, you had your husband co-author it with you?
Well, the thing you need to understand is a man sometimes need to help a woman understand
herself. So anyway, he said the husband wrote, like, he goes, it seems like he wrote the chapters, the first 3 anyway. And he just said, so here's a crazy thing about women.
That's always a good start.
Yeah. And he goes, and I kept, he would say it, and then we'd get to a new chapter and he'd go, so here's another crazy thing about women. And he goes, he was building up, and I kind of expected him at some point to say, here's how you handle it, or here's how you interact with it. And he goes, no, just 3 chapters of pointing out that they're crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh.
He wrote this book because he's like, look, babe, that first book you wrote, I did not like it. So I get in on this one or you're not writing it. That's just no ifs, ands, or buts.
I was just like, how on earth are these, as she put it, required reading for thousands of newlywed couples?
Yeah. Well, keeping the bar low, though. Only thousands.
Well, it might have been more.
I wouldn't go above at least a couple hundred.
She cites things that I'm like, do I not get like a footnote that tells me where I can find these studies you're referencing? Some of the questions feel real dodgy, though.
Full roll dodgy. So look, we're not doing that book next because there's 2 books we have to do for that one. So that one's right out.
Fine.
It's either Dave Grohl or Comfort Crisis. Winner is
Dave
We'll
Grohl.
let you know. Okay.
There you go, Dave Grohl. Mike just declared
we'll let you know.
We'll put a link in it so that people can purchase it. We're going to do this one in what? We're going to give them a month.
Yeah.
We'll do one a month. So it will be on the next one. They have to have it read by like the middle of August, Spacemen. So
August 14th.
Tell your wife you can't go on a date for the next month because you're spending time with Dave Grohl and the Manspace.
Unless she wants to read Dave Grohl with you.
No, this is men only.
Like, that's the whole reason I'm saying the Dave Grohl book is it's been on my list to read for months.
Well, I've talked about
and
the
I've
Comfort
almost
Crisis,
bought it so many times.
And it's going to be my follow-up as we talk about Rob's Ruckin'.
Oh, that's right.
That's right, because I forgot you started rucking.
Which I was mentioning this rucking to a client, and he's like, well, where'd you get your stuff? I was like, Go Ruck. He's like, dude, this is a little annoying to me. I was like, what? He's like, I told you about this months ago. Now you're telling me about it like I've never heard about this. He's like, I'm way deep in this stuff. I was like, oh, whoops. He's like, this is what people feel like when their spouse says something and the therapist says the same thing and they like what the therapist says.
Yeah, I saw a group of guys doing it, but not with the official gear.
Yeah.
Just backpacks.
Yeah, I don't want to jack my back up that way.
That's what I was going to say. I didn't look like it would be.
You can get like weighted vests that are different. Like that's
yeah, but this was all in the back. The weight was all in the back. So
I say, isn't yours like the vest?
No, mine is just the back. It's just a weight on my back. I'm curious about trying the vest for running. I wouldn't run with this rucksack on because I don't think it would work well.
Bounce a whole bunch?
Yeah, too much bouncing, too much jarring on knees. I don't want that.
Yeah.
Was that thunder again, Matt?
Yeah, dude. I think I'll be all right connection-wise, but if I drop out,
that's all right.
Just know that Houston has gone down once again.
My drive to work yesterday was real dodgy.
Yeah,
because of weather.
It was raining so hard, and I think I need new tires. But there was also just like on the highest speed, my wipers could barely keep up. So,
all right, dudes.
All right,
we're jumping into the topic today. We're going to treat this like a case consultation. For those spacemen who don't know this, in the show notes on what you listen to, before you read the show notes, there is usually a little thing that says, send us a text. Did you guys know that, Mike? Matt?
I didn't. I saw the Buzzsprout email about it, and I didn't really know how that works in other platforms.
I think that I don't know where that I couldn't.
So it's
find
in the show notes. You're saying?
Yeah, in every show note at the very top, it says send us a text. So you can send us a text and ask us questions. Now, keep in mind, here's our disclaimer. Anything we say on this show obviously cannot be taken as like specific therapeutic advice. This is just us getting a very small snippet of information and saying, here's some thoughts we have on this. Obviously, take any thoughts with a grain of salt. But I have a few thoughts about this thing. So I'll just say someone specifically asked. They said they have. Oh yeah, see, there's the
Send
thing.
us a text.
Send us a text message.
Yeah,
and
that's
that will
awesome.
somehow get to us. So you can actually make a request of a show topic or something like that.
Or
and
a
there's
book to read.
That's true. Once we get the Manspace, the what do we got the? I got to come up with a book club name. That's what I wanted to say.
The Man Book.
The Book Man.
How about the study?
Oh, we could go back to the original name of this podcast and call it The Steep.
Oh,
Matt and I were going to call this The Steep.
Infusing.
It was a whole.
Yeah. Anyway,
It was confusing. It took too much. I think it was an awesome explanation or name. But so, Matt and Mike, this is just be like a spur of the moment. I'm coming to you with a client topic, and you guys give me your thoughts. I've got some thoughts on this too. There's a couple different topics in this that I think are worth approaching. So, if here's this scenario, it's a couple who is long distance, and one of them is, and I have some, I'll just lay it out. I have some thoughts on this, but I'll just lay it out. One of them is anxiously attached. One is avoidantly attached. So 2 questions in that. One, how do you manage, like if this is somebody coming to you and saying, I have one therapy session with you, give me your advice. One is, what do you do with this anxious avoidant attachment pattern? And maybe even from your understanding, your kind of non-jargoned version of what that is. And then 2, what are your tips, we'll say, for managing relationships long distance? And Leroy Jenkins.
Mike, charge the fortress.
The best is in that Leroy Jenkins scene. They're like, oh, Leroy, man, what are you doing? I seriously, I can't. I like to imagine Leroy like giggling to himself, like, or like
Leroy probably thought he was awesome.
like he's probably like, I'm sick of Kevin, man, always taking this serious, like we're going into battle for,
We have
Can
a
I get a number count on that? 33.3%.
repeating, of course.
Yeah, I like that anybody said repeating. Of course, I mean, do you mean to say you have a 1/3 chance of survival, man? Like,
So,
take either
There's
one of
a-
those. Like, you don't have to address both. You can just say this is what stands out to you.
well, I won't go very deep into the first one, I think.
The first one
I don't
being
know.
the anxious
I guess-
attachment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because, like when I read it and like we kind of talked about this before, there's a concept, I guess. We refer to it as the pursuer-distancer relationship, right?
Yeah.
Where one person, when they want to, for example, improve the relationship, will pursue, they'll chase, they'll up their game to try to make things better.
Which would tend to be the anxiously attached person.
Yeah. And then the distancer is the one where when they feel that, starts to, like it says, put distance between them and their spouse usually, right? An easy example is the husband who will spend, if he's the distancer, will spend increasing time at work to avoid being at home, because when he's at home, his wife is always, like over the top and pushing and wanting to like make sure everything's okay and are we okay? And so he spends more and more time at work. I mean, it's again easier said than done, but the funny thing about this dynamic is neither person realizes that if they just stop, so does the other person. Right? That's kind of the nature. I mean, that's, like I said, it's an oversimplification a little bit, but that's the nature of this dynamic to me, I think, is if I stop running, then she'll stop pursuing me so much because she's no longer as worried that I'm running. And if I'm the chaser, if I stop chasing, he'll stop putting distance between. So, to me, when you're trying to balance that, like I said, it's easy for me to sit here and say that's how that's how you address it. You just one of you stops.
Stop it.
But again, especially if you're the anxiously attached, that's a hard thing to do because your anxiety is gonna it's gonna tell you every worst possible scenario will play out.
Well, and it can feel like if I stop, the distancer, the avoidant one, will never re-engage.
Right. Now that's the thing that to me is kind of interesting is I think the longer the distancer or the avoidant attached, the longer he tries to distance, or she, as the case may be, to me, I think the less they probably are likely to engage. I think the physical distance makes that worse. I think if they're in the same city, that's probably not as likely, right? But this is a long distance relationship, and one of the dangers to me of the long distance relationship is that we become comfortable in the separation. We don't, like, okay, I didn't get a text my wife today. Oh, that's okay. I'll just get her tomorrow. Oh, I haven't texted my wife in 3 days. Suddenly it's been a week. Suddenly it's been right. Because as we're away, it's easy to just kind of slip into this is the routine. And so I think if you're the avoidant, then the routine becomes keep my distance. The routine becomes don't engage. And then when the person stops, I'm going to, not trust that they're actually going to stop. I'm going to constantly be kind of worried that they're just going to slip back into the same behavior. And so I'm going to naturally keep a little bit of distance anyway. And then if I see anything that looks like it, my brain's likely going to say, see, they're doing it again. And reflexively, I'll just step back and say, nope, I'm not engaging. So that to me is kind of the danger of those.
It's a real downer, right?
I know, right?
Let's inject some hope into this bad boy.
Right. I was going to say somebody needs to. This is why you don't let Mike do his own shows.
Mike starts off, he's like, well, should probably just break up now. It's not going to work anyway.
I do have thoughts about how to manage a long distance relationship, but that's a different part of this conversation.
Okay, good. I hope it's hopeful. I hope it's not like send a text that says, well, we had a good run.
It's been 30 years, but it's probably time to call it.
Matt, what thoughts do you have?
I'm going to do maybe what you said not to do.
Oh, great. Matt's sending the text.
So sorry. I'm sending the text.
The text that says, we had a good run.
Oh, no, I think for me, like I have to think about it in terms of, like even the wording, maybe I need to read that comment from the person that texted it. But if it said like, I am anxiously attached, or she is anxiously or avoidantly attached.
I think it actually just says that I have this attachment style and she has this attachment style.
Okay.
But you're getting at something I want to get into. So
I guess even there, like, yeah, I think, look, I am definitely a fan of categories, but more just like as a starting place for a conversation. And I think, the stuff I've seen on this on social media, I think misses some critical components and
big time.
Right. Like, so if these aren't like personality tests, right? And the idea in a relationship is that you will both become more securely attached. Otherwise, it's just going to be kind of like what Mike said, like, what are we doing, right? And I also think rather than categories, these are two dimensions of attachment styles or strategies that people use to manage the distance and closeness in a relationship. And so like, to what degree are we talking, right? If it's like, man, I'm really, really high in anxious attachment strategies when I try to like manage primarily distance, probably, like, and shore up the distance between me and my partner, that's difficult, right? And it doesn't really end up leading to more security or more secure interactions with my partner. I don't get a sense that my partner is really there for me. Everything I do seems to kind of like drive him or her further away. And if I'm like really on the avoidant end, I'm going to be so leery of being swallowed up by the relationship that I'm constantly going to be like minimizing my partner's attempts to connect and labeling them as needy and like just trying to infuse more autonomy into my partner and self-sufficiency. So I don't know to what degree this guy's talking, right? But if it's pretty extreme, then like, there are really specific types of therapy that help you get into conversations with each other where you essentially like both reach towards the middle at the same time to have a secure bonding event that helps you start to trust that all the strategies I've used, all the ways that I've tried to get you to care about me or leave me alone, I don't need to do that, right? This feels better. This is, and you learn and you become more and more securely attached. But outside of close physical proximity, like when I think long distance relationships, I think what are some of the priorities you have for a relationship? Because if one of those is like close physical proximity and sexual exclusivity, and like, long distance is going to be real hard, right? But if it's like, I'm fine with FaceTiming every night and meeting up, every 3 weeks or whatever, and like the conversations are going well enough that when we do get to connect physically, things go well. And I'm not overly distressed when I'm not around you, then yeah, people can make that work. But I don't think anybody would say that's my goal, right? I think it's just it's something that oftentimes happens because of people's circumstances and they have to manage. Yeah. But I think there's got to be some real open conversations and going back to the anxious side of things, right? If their strategy to kind of secure a relationship is to say yes to a lot of things that don't feel right, but they can't say that out of fear of losing the relationship, then they're probably going to overcommit and be overly optimistic about the distance, giving the avoidant partner the wrong expectations. And then all of a sudden it's like, I miss you so much. Why aren't you talking to me? Why aren't you texting back? And then the other person's like, whoa, I thought you said you're going to be cool with this, right? And and then that gets interpreted as, you don't care about me as much as I care about you. And it's like, is that true? Or is it just the thing that you need from me is different, right? And the avoidant person also can be kind of putting the other person on trial in a way and saying like, you better show me that you're not going to swallow me up, right? Like, and I still need my space. And so I'm going to like punish you with silence or demeaning comments when you're reaching out to me, because my fear is you're going to swallow me, right? I don't know how to hold on to myself in a relationship, and that's my primary issue. But those are my thoughts. Send the text. No, I'm just joking.
Dearest Rachel. So I actually think when I've said many times on this show, I have a real issue with stuff I see on social media because it takes one element of something and makes it sound not only so categorical, but so definitive and fixed that I feel like, so I appreciate actually this person said attach, like I have this attachment style. Essentially, it's like saying, I know I have this pattern and I think that she has this pattern. Because then at least you can, I mean, obviously for the three of us being therapists, I think, well, yeah, you can change those patterns. Those are not fixed. It's
Right.
why that the idea behind like adult attachment is that you can reform and make new attachments all the time. You can create secure attachment. This is not like, sorry, man, your DNA says you have this kind of attachment.
Yeah.
So it is changeable. And actually the thing that it can sound a little bit like, oh crap, I have, it doesn't sound good to say I have anxious or avoidant attachment. It's like, uh-oh. But really it's like saying, yeah, actually most couples have an avoidant anxious attachment pattern or a pursue distance attachment pattern. Now, stereotypically, we've talked about this before, or even statistically speaking, it's more likely to have a male distancer and a female pursuer, or a male avoidant and a female anxious. But in my relationship, I think that's flipped. I'm more the anxious pursuer than my wife is. I'm not sure she likes me. So I'm currently composing a text.
Is now a good time to tell you about the conversation I had with her last week?
She and I chatted the other night. I'm like, what do I do? He's so smothering. But I think, I think it's helpful and hopeful to recognize, oh, these are patterns that I have or that we have together. And sometimes actually I've met couples where it's like, I've known, for example, two kind of avoidant people, but when they get together, one of them becomes the more anxious one. So it's not like, and then they get with somebody else. It's like, oh, your pattern shifted now because this one's more anxious than you are. And so it's not like a set in stone thing. And actually the question of like, what do you do with this kind of pattern as a couple? It's like, well, you do what everyone does, right? You be a couple and you go say, hey, let's figure out how we communicate what's going to work for us. Because it's extremely common. I don't know that I've seen too many couples obviously have a biased sample of people who I just say those are two securely attached people. I feel like it's pretty rare, or maybe it's more spectrumy than we think it is. But so that's one thing in my. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just going to say, like my memory of it, right, is it's the
grid or the
yeah. And so I think that in its very nature is spectrumy. Because you can, anywhere in the upper right quadrant is anxious avoidant or avoidant attachment, but the closer I get to the center, I'm not right. It's the person to me that has 9 of the symptoms of ADHD versus the person who has 4. Right. Yeah, they both have ADHD. One of them just has it way worse than the other one.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's helpful to keep that, because as long as you can keep in your head, like, hey, this is something that's workable. And the same thing is true. Like, and Matt, you're kind of saying this, like, yes, you can, and absolutely, if you ask me, obviously I think, yeah, go to therapy, even virtual therapy. That's totally a possibility, depending on where you live. Now, admittedly, I think most states are becoming more and more cool with like, hey, look, I see you, but I see, your partner lives in wherever and in a different state, and that's okay. California, unless they've changed their laws recently, is kind of an exception. It's like, no, if you step foot in California, I can see you. If you step foot out even for a week to a different place and you want to see me, you got to go see somebody else while you're. I read some of their laws like, California, what are you guys doing?
And ironically, if my client steps foot in California,
I know
I can't see them.
California's like, no, they're ours now.
Yeah.
So, California, you funny people. I should really wish I could live in California, but
I do not.
Dude, San Diego, come on. So
I like where I live, man.
But I think that's one element of this, and along those lines, and this will tie me over into the idea of what do you do for long distance. One element to me is I do think everyone kind of has to figure out, especially if on either side, if I'm the avoidant one and I want to kind of withdraw, I have to learn how to regulate internally what's going on for me so that I can engage differently, even if it makes me feel uncomfortable. To say, okay, I want to share some stuff with you I wouldn't normally share, and I'm worried that if I do, you're going to kind of like jump all over it, and you're going to want to know all my deep, dark, dirty secrets. And sometimes for the pursuer or the anxious one, it's like, I can appreciate what you're sharing with me, and I'll move at this pace because it's a big deal to me that you're sharing. I know it's not easy for you to do. I think that internal regulation to know that if they're not sharing with me right now, it doesn't mean blank. It doesn't mean I should be awaiting a text or this or this. Right now, all I know is, even to say, hey, I miss you, and I'm texting that, and that's all. I miss you, and there's nothing more that needs to come. You don't have to say it back because I know it's not your thing right now, or you're overwhelmed or whatever. I think that's helpful, but it takes an internal regulation that I think is achievable largely through, I think you can learn a lot of that through meditation. But the long distance thing, and this is what you're right, Matt, it is tricky when it comes to like physical connection. But long distance thing is a little bit like when I meet couples that say they want to do this, we're going to do a trial separation to maybe help our relationship. Now, I think we've talked about that on previous episodes. Spoiler alert, I don't think that actually works. I think that usually leads towards divorce. But when couples say that's what they want to do, I will tell them there are a few rules I have that if you're going to do that, it has to be very deliberate about what this will look like. You have to have very clear communication and clear understanding and plans and clear I guess we'll say plans to like stay connected. So the same thing to me is true with long distance, is being able to say, hey, let's sit down and talk about what this looks like. What are our expectations for what long distance will look like for us? Because this is really hard for couples to do, but totally possible. I've known some people who've done it for a very long time. 6 months at a time. I've known people where it's like 6 months on, 6 months off. The one goes to another country for 6 months, comes back. And they have very clear things that they do while they're gone for 6 months of how they make sure that they stay very well connected, including virtual or long distance sex, right? They find ways that work for them on whatever platform they feel comfortable using that feels connecting to them. And a lot of times for those couples, they lower their expectations, meaning they make it kind of fun. Like, hey, this is what it is, and it's something we do together. And so it's fun, and it's kind of a trust building, emotional connection building, because it's like, remember that time we did that and then the connection failed right in the middle, so it's,
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think too that's an area where it helps. Right, I think it's Snarch. Who talks about the idea of broadening, like the definition of a sexual experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't think
So
it has
not
to
just
be an orgasm, and
right. And I think like that's the unique opportunity that presents, is a lot of couples won't, unless they're encouraged to, they're not usually going to kind of explore that on their own because they don't need to, because they're physically there and together. But for the long distance couple, no, it's like you said, Matt, like unless they're okay with, whatever partners are in between. But if they're talking about a monogamous long distance relationship, then yeah, they have to figure out some way to satisfy that aspect. But it can be done. It just might require broadening their definition of what a sexual experience is.
Yeah.
Well, and Matt mentioned too. Oh, go ahead, dude. You say it.
Well, you're probably building more off of the last point. I've got a separate thought.
All right. Well, don't lose it.
Okay.
Because all I was going to say was, I think, because to me, the physical connection is one piece. It's a very important piece, but it's one piece.
Right.
I do think that can be achieved through something Matt mentioned, which is you kind of need to schedule consistently. These are the times that we'll see each other. If you can do it every 3 weeks or every month or whatever, great. If you can't, then it's at least like we know that we see each other every 6 months, and when we're together, we plan the next one so that we know when the next one will be. And then I think there's lots of in-between stuff of like, we talk nightly, we do these things regularly on the schedule, because if we don't, we may not do them because we get busy. And as far as the withdrawing and pursuing goes, don't, and this is not easy sometimes when you feel the pursuing or the anxiously attached pattern, to be able to say, hey, we're just here to hang out. We don't have to have deeper discussion of everything that's going on. I just want to spend time with you. Because sometimes it feels like, well, every time we want to hang out, you want to talk about something deep. And it's like, sometimes I just want to know that it's okay to just we shot the breeze and made jokes about my coworker. And that just felt nice to talk with you and remember that we're friends. Now on the withdrawer side, it's like, yeah, sometimes you're going to want to say, well, let me just share some things that are going on that get a little deeper. But I think all of that has to be very overt. The mistake people make in these things is thinking we can go about a long distance relationship and this person may have done this already, but go about this long distance relationship the way we would a normal relationship. And it's like, you can't. This has to be very almost formal and scheduled and overt in order to make this work. And if it's long distance period and you have no end goal in sight, I think you should talk about what an end goal would be. Like, hey, one of us might need to move closer to the other person, if that's possible. But Matt, what were your tangential thoughts that were going to derail us totally?
Well, I was thinking about like one of the questions, and so Sue Johnson is the founder of Emotionally Focused Couples Therapy, which is,
Don't forget Les Greenberg.
well, he's not the founder of the couples side of it. I don't
That's
think.
true. Fine.
But
Poor Les.
she's got several books, but in one of them she has a set of questions about this, and one of the questions is, I feel connected to my partner even when we're apart. And like, I think that's really telling in these relationships, because if what you experience when you're apart is like separation anxiety or separation relief, like that's a crack that already exists in your relationship that you're not dealing with when you're together. And just like any other stressor, time apart, long distance will just press down on that and either cause a bigger fracture. I think, when couples can say yes to that question, I know we're connected even though we're apart, then there's an ease of interaction that happens around all of these scheduled times, right? Or a relative ease. I mean, it's always hard, I think, but like there's not like a frantic or hesitant engagement, if that makes sense. Like, if you have those separation anxiety and separation relief, meaning like, I'm away from my partner, right? I don't have to worry about, because I think for the avoidant person, oftentimes their fear is like, I have to manage my partner's attachment anxiety, and they don't take accountability for the way that affects me and the desire for distance that it creates in me. And the anxious person is thinking, I'm doing all of these things to connect, and I'm working so hard at the relationship, and why are they not reciprocating? And
right.
If I do more, that seems to be maybe the only thing I know to do in those moments is to do more. And so they're not recognizing, or the avoidant person isn't recognizing that, like, leaning in a lot of cases, leaning in, right, does bring that anxiety down. So like, if you're already feeling that when you leave, right, if the anxious person is like, I can't wait to talk to you tonight, or I can't wait to see you next weekend, the other person's like, yeah, see ya. And then they're like, and they get in the car and they're like, oh, right, like that's a sign that you probably should be having another conversation, rather than trying to make a long distance thing work until it's kind of inevitable that it. I think we just generally, in situations like this, we kind of know, and like, it's just a lot easier to let something kind of die on the vine and not talk about it and have, than it is to like actually confront some of these issues and see, can we work on it or not? But as far as the people that make it work, I think they're probably more able to say before they even separate, I know we're connected, right? I trust you. And you are trustworthy, right? When we talk, it feels like we both want to be connecting with each other. When we spend time together, we're not like putting so much pressure on that time that we sabotage it, right? Like, everything rides on this weekend, right? And then you're both you have a horrible weekend, right? It's like, no, because we'll have plenty of other weekends like this because we're good, right? This is just one of many, I think. I think that's probably a bigger indicator of how you'll do long distance wise.
That's partly why I think the idea of a conversation about expectations, like what is it that you're looking for in this, and not one to say, how come, why aren't we doing this or this more, or I need more. It's just going in and saying, well, what is it? What feels good to you in this process? Like, so I understand where this is, because sometimes it's not even that I've met plenty of couples where it's like the one who's withdrawing. It's like, well, actually, they're not withdrawing the way you think they are, but they're not engaging the way that you do. And so it doesn't look the same. So for them, it could be that one feels like, no, I know we're totally fine. So it's okay if we don't text. But the other one could say, it doesn't feel like, even if we're fine, can we just check in with each other? It's like, okay, cool. But so long as it's not like, but are we still friends? Are we still, like, because sometimes you're right, Matt, the way it's like, can't wait to see you again tonight. It's like, it's almost like you're trying to get them to like, you too, right? So can't wait to see me. I mean, I've had, this has been a long time. I was thinking about women where it's like, that was a good day, right? You want to go? It's like, yeah. See you. Thanks for that. That's exactly what I said. So in short, actually, I think I'm just kidding, Mike, you didn't actually have that much of a downer tone. I was going to say despite Mike's downer tone, but you didn't really.
Haha.
Oh.
I mean, thanks.
Yeah. I don't know what the haha was. Also, hey, Mike, just real quick, did we lose Matt or is he still there?
I think we lost him.
Yeah, I think he's just. Oh, yeah,
yep, there he goes. Lightning just struck and knocked my internet out.
It's all right. We're about out of time anyway. I'm pretty impressed with how loud the thunder is there. I've heard it a couple times.
No kidding.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I've heard it a few times.
So apparently, Matt, hopefully lightning only struck, nobody.
Yeah.
So, but I think actually there's a lot of hope in this, but I do think it helps. It's very helpful to know you just kind of, and it's hard. I will say this, it's helpful to be very deliberate and overt about things in this context. It can be difficult if you feel like, because for this person, it may feel like I've tried doing that, but they don't want to engage with me on that. And sometimes it's like, okay, if the hard part is if you feel like, hey, I'm still invested in this and I'm still engaged and I still want to be with you. Sometimes it's a helpful reframe to say, but it could be that, like you don't need it you don't need the same kind of connection I do in the same way. And so I think I'll trust you that we're still okay. And not overthink the fact that you're not talking to me or whatever. And same thing the other direction, that the withdrawer wouldn't be like, well, I trust that because you're texting me all the time and saying, hey, I miss you. You're not saying, and you miss me too, right? You're just letting me know you miss me. And I appreciate that. And that's kind of you. And, it's a little bit, like learning the love languages. It's like, look, we all kind of function in different ways. So let me just check in with where you are. I've learned with my wife when I say that she's more the distancer than I am. She's not really a distancer, but she does take time. Like when I say stuff, stuff just comes out of my mouth, as people who listen know. And for her, she will think about things for a couple of days. I've said this on multiple episodes. It's like, well, that needs to sit in my head. And so I've had to learn to say, okay, I trust you that you will come back to me with this. And she does. Sometimes it takes longer than others. She'll say, hey, look, here's some of the things I was thinking about this thing. And so it is a process of trusting. That's kind of what happens with long distance, especially. It's a lot of like, hey, I'm going to trust we're okay. And just being as clear as possible. I've said that too many times, so I'm going to stop talking.
Well, but that's, I think, and I know we need to be done, but I think that's, yes, like you can't just expect it's going to work. You have to be intentional about it. And yeah, it might feel formal a little bit, but some of that is just because you're learning a new pattern. And anytime you're learning something new, it feels awkward and clunky. Okay, the more you do it, it becomes normal and comfortable. So it's okay. And again, that idea of, sometimes you just shoot the breeze about stuff. Why? Well, because that's kind of how the relationship started.
Yeah, it's good to remember your friends.
Most relationships start with just shooting the breeze about nonsense. Just being intentional about stuff.
In this listener's defense, my guess is there's probably a number of the things that we've suggested. I think that they could probably say, I've done that. And some things that if I really sat with this person, I could say, well, you're kind of doing this, consider this. And that's why mostly I'm saying, hey, if possible, just have some expectations conversations.
Yeah.
of what this will look like, and not with the pressure of like some need will get met in this, but saying, help me understand where you are with this.
Yep.
Because otherwise it can sound like with the tone of like, I'm open to accepting wherever you are. And if they say, I think it's great, it's like, okay. And I think you can absolutely still express some, this is helpful to me if I have more of this. It's different to have that overtly stated than to have it kind of indirectly requested through text or actions or things like that. But I do think it's very workable. Oh, look, Matt's back.
No, he came back. Welcome back, Matt.
I don't know if the my previous recording will load, but
I'm sure it'll be fine.
We'll see.
Keep going, Mike.
I had someone use the phrase. I asked him. I said, "Have you ever actually have you expressed that to your spouse? What is that? How did that go?" And he goes, "Well, in effect, I did."
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah, I got the gist. It's like, no, I need to know.
And then
say it like
and then
this.
as we talked about it, I was like, oh no, the thing you said, like, sure, but it was one small part of the conversation. And I said, you're needing to communicate these things. And so there is a lot to be said for, the number of times I've done it myself where someone will say something. I'm like, yeah, I did that. Only to find out when I see it in more detail, I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. Right. Where it's, my understanding of what I think is different than the thing they're telling me. And so, yeah. Anyway.
So I think on this topic, obviously for anybody listening, anytime we give, kind of tips, it's like, well, obviously we can't guarantee any outcomes because I don't know the partner or the person even. So it's like,
there's
knows?
A bunch of the story we don't have.
But I do think, in short, I do feel like there's lots of room to make all sorts of types of relationship work. And keep in mind that pursue distance or that avoidant anxious thing is actually really common. So that's one of the things I tell couples almost every first session is like, hey, this is really common. So it's very workable. Because sometimes we hear that and it feels like, oh, shoot, we're one of the broken ones. It's like, no, you're literally like 95% of us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay. We're all muddling through and doing the best we can. And this one's workable. It's just going to take a lot of deliberate effort. And as a side note, I'm pretty sure that Matt faked a lightning strike so he could go get a snack because it looked like he was eating food when he came back.
I was eating food, but I was not baking. I figured since it wasn't coming back, I'd eat something. But
so come back next time and see if Matt's been lying to us or not. Next time on the Manspace. How about a snackety dack dack?